Yeah, we'll see here. There's something about green crabs, you're right.
I've seen too many of them.
All right, so 501, is that Brian there? Can he hear us? On iPhone guest? Oh,
I can hear you there, Rusty.
great, thanks for signing in.
Yeah.
Looks like Victor's stalking us there too. The B-man. Okay, so yeah, so I guess we could call to order 501.
Yep.
Call the meeting to order here for 5/15/2025 Shellfish meeting. We need to. Was there anything in those minutes from that last thing that concerned you, David?
But I could see.
It's good then. All right, so we'll make a motion for approval of minutes from last meeting. Yeah, David didn't say there's any concern, so I think we're doing all right then. So I'll say aye on that.
Aye.
And we probably don't have a warden update unless we had some crazy incident happen, which fortunately have. And state, you said we're not gonna have state here. For this. Any old business? Hearing none. I didn't do my homework either, dude.
No. Yeah. Numbers are pretty good figure.
Good.
For. And if you again. I see a picture of 1940 in clients. They were beautiful.
Not to sidetrack, my friend's grandfather used to talk about the airport ramp in Trenton and the trucks at the airport there in the truck. They didn't use baskets, he said they filled their pickup trucks with land. And then drove them up the shore into a truck, a big trailer truck would meet them and buy them all.
Oh, yeah.
That's what he said.
Right.
Well,
We had 3 miles of shore to climb in road. We had it everywhere.
so that is
Down east.
that is some old business. So
Yeah, we had clams that were buried. We had 3 miles of shore.
I guess what we really have to talk about, just not much really, is the new business.
Okay.
Budgetary stuff. And we had no like crazy ask for you to be here. We're just aware that we had some funds and it sounded significant. Do you happen to have that total that we have in that account?
Yes, it's $18,592.05. That's those are my numbers, our auditors have a number that is overstated, I think, in about $57. I think that's for expenditures that happened in 22. But we're looking at about 18,500. 600.
It sounded from the reaction of the Department of Marine Resources representative. She was pretty shocked, like positively shocked in a good way, that because she said a lot of communities, money's the problem. So we kind of have an inverse situation. And we just really don't have a very strong commercial resource for plant harvesting, shellfish harvesting, but we do have, I think we sold in the teens or low 20s for recreational harvester people. So we have kind of a nascent or, industry happening, but I don't think there's any reason, and this isn't anything directed to you. I don't think we should come up with an excuse to just spend money because we have it. But I think that there could be some maybe yeah, there could be, and if we don't come, did you happen to think of any, you know, avenues that we might spend a small, and I didn't do that homework either, but you
Well,
know,
I did, I made some suggestions, like I said, we'll find.
well, the one, like, and I wouldn't want to take a huge, unless there was a really, really strong, cause, I wouldn't want to really take a big bite. Here's a question, like, so if, and I don't know if you even know this, but like, if we came up with a program or project that we wanted to allocate some funds to, and then we would present that to the,
Select board.
the select board, yeah,
Yeah.
for approval.
Yeah, so Claire talked to me about that, and just if you guys had come up with anything that you wanted to kind of pursue. It probably wouldn't be in this next select board meeting, but the one after that being June 2nd.
Okay.
Would be the one to go to, and then the deadline for submissions for that would be on the 29th.
Okay, all good to know.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything, fortunately, we're kind of in a good situation because we're trying to find something constructive. And if it doesn't come from us, maybe we can engage with some other people in the community and organizations, but I would be, since Earl you mentioned that the traditional thing goes right to like, there has been attempted like seed stocking of clam seed on the flats programs, but I don't really feel like we're interested in biting on to that right now, but that shouldn't put us in neutral to not do anything. So I would be in favor of like, and I don't know how it would be approved and other people, but even anything shoreline, coastal, and
Setting up the one that we can climb in the winter weather, where it won't be to the summer people.
yeah, exactly, Earl, the access issue and.
Why I figure Cove was closed all those years.
Yeah.
It's a simple reason the people didn't want it open then.
Well, I was trying to come up with a hands-on thing, and things like, I
The
noticed.
winter time is a different story. Cause I'm not when I climber anyway.
Well, it's something simple. I know some of the other communities, a common, like a low-hanging fruit thing that committees have done, and I see they are around, is to help pay for, say, like a dog waste kiosk. And I see they're around here, and that's because any dog waste going into the waterways is like pretty horrific as far as bacterial levels.
Yeah.
And like, when I see they're around, and I don't like seeing more signage, but I see like the one right here in the parking lot, it's like been plowed over and it's in rough shape, and I'm sure the town has budget to probably do that, but maybe that would be a low hanging fruit type way that us as a committee could say, oh geez, how much is that sign and that post that's crushed, and maybe we could, sponsor replacing that or something. I'm not trying to do, like, but anything that it's short. And the other thing that kind of came to mind was, and this is a little bit more of an egg to hatch, but is, and I don't know what, the fish shack in Otter Creek there
Yeah.
really got rim racked by that storms, and it's leaning a lot. And I just didn't know if, and I'm talking like a couple $100, not thousands. I didn't know if maybe something, I know there's a lot of photographs taken of that, and that's like kind of our fishing heritage. And even though it's not particularly maybe directly shellfish related, it would be, maybe we could sponsor that being leveled and stabilized or something, if that was even possible.
If I'm wrong, who owns that?
I think the Otter Creek Historical Society, if I understand it properly. So there's a whole bunch of integration that would potentially happen, but I was just trying to literally like food for thought of ways that we might engage with the community with coastal themed improvement in mind. That was kind of really the only piece that I really had to say, and I didn't know if anybody else had any.
Well, I also have the training for another board, which is a good suggestion as well.
Yes, I like that. Yes, true.
Having more eyes on the flats is the most important thing.
We'll have to buy them a pair of green crab stomping boots.
So I have a couple questions. So first of all, with the regard to the dog waste, posts, I guess. Yes, thank you. I believe our public works department or building and grounds has that appropriate in our budgets. I
Yeah.
don't think you need to use your
Yeah.
Shellfish funds specifically for that. I have to check. The town has funds to be able to cover that are not restricted to Shellfish.
Yeah,
I can double check that, but I recommend you use funds that are restricted specifically for Shellfish, which is what the $18,000 is restricted for.
okay, good to know, yeah.
And so, there's, that, and then two, we do have, every year in the budget, there is about $33,000. Last year it was 3,400, and before that was 3,200, that is appropriated for the Shellfish department. It falls under the police department warrant article. I don't know. If you are familiar with this, I'm not very familiar. I just know that it's appropriated every year. This year, I think for 2026, we had $3,400.
Specifically.
That's the warden service. So that's what I'm thinking. That, if you're talking about for warden training, that is an appropriation that I'm not positive what it's used for. We haven't used it in several years, I think since fiscal year 24. Fiscal year 22. There were, I believe, expenditures for warden equipment, I believe is the last time that was used.
Out of this,
Out of the, not the restricted funds that we're referring to, the roll, the carry forward that we do every year. Which I only have data back to fiscal year 21, and fiscal year 21, that's where I can see that our audited financials have it was a $15,000 balance, and then we've increased it for the last several years to this 18,600. And so, but outside of the this fund balance that we're talking about here specifically for Shellfish, within the general operating budget, there's $3,400. And I believe that's, as you said, used for warden expenses. I'm not really sure what the covenant is, whether there's things within your charter that has a state specific purpose, rules for using these funds. But if it's for the warden, we do have, I think, at least $3,000 in the 26 and actually in the 25 budget currently. So, I mean, if you're talking.
I guess it would be interesting to see how the police department decides to use that if they don't have any warrants.
Yes, so for the last few years, since we haven't had there's been no use of those funds whatsoever.
so it's
Okay.
kind of a symptom of like the legacy, like Claire would describe and mentioned to Evan, we used to have a line of harvesters to wait for, and now that the industry has reduced, that's not really the case, but we have these legacy procedures like warden fund allocation still in place to address the number of, so there's kind of a pivot there, and I don't know. And then just to backtrack and cover my own tail a little bit, like about like low hanging fruit things about the signage and stuff like that, is that's great to know. And I figured, and I'm not gonna like beat that horse to death at all, but I know in some communities that didn't have that program, that is something that Shellfish Committee sponsored to get it up, like going type in communities that maybe didn't have those funds. So I was just trying to grasp for something to
No, absolutely.
talk about
It's a
and
great
get-
idea. I
get
just
your
don't
clar-
have to necessarily use those funds for that.
And I'm actually realizing we're lucky that you showed up to,
I'm very glad.
Looks like our money has been accruing for quite a while.
yeah.
Yes.
So there sounds like there's some type of, am I understanding this correct? There's potentially a little bit of a disconnect between there's funds being allocated, but they're not being accessed by the warden funds because we haven't, well, we don't know. We won't say why because, but we know that maybe the pressure is off and we don't have as much control, but the funds are still being allocated.
We were budgeting for Shellfish.
So it sounds like there's something a disconnect there that we could,
Yeah, maybe meet
Solve
with the
in
police
some-
department. I don't know
Yeah.
if Dave, our police chief, is very involved with warden service.
Well, it's kind of a good sign that we're not like, oh my gosh, we have all this going on and have the wardens here saying like, we have a bunch of bad things happening. So in that way, it's kind of.
That is good. I think it's there if needed. I think that's why we've been actually budgeting for every year.
Original idea was kind of privatizing private citizens to get warden training. Well, we mentioned that. Other communities have looked into that, not just getting a police
So
officer.
the real one,
But to be a private citizen or a harvester. I don't know, Brian had mentioned that once to me, but the idea is checked around, that, you know. That money could go towards training at the police academy. Every year when we have the Shellfish ones. And if somebody wanted to get that certification, where you could pay.
Yeah, and if it provided a more public safety type training, I think that would be a great thing. But I'm just wondering, in your opinion, David, like my opinion, but I'm not out there stomping around, is I just feel like because of our reduced resource, the pressure of poaching is a bit less.
Yeah, I'll get into that later, 'cause I've done quite a bunch of stuff, surveys, so I can brief you on some areas and observe.
Well, and just, you know,
You are correct.
yeah, so if there's less, I just,
It's just an idea flow, that's all.
yeah, I just want to, you know, stay proportional with the need, if it's less poaching potential that we're facing.
Not. Yeah, actually,
Yeah,
yeah.
Earl?
I've rarely seen the poach. It took just 2 weeks to dig Southwest Top. And it had the Maine down there.
So, yeah, we wouldn't want the program to go like away because something could
It went
change
from
with,
clams and no clams in 2 weeks.
because of what Earl's kind of talking about. So I'm not sure where this leaves us, but I think
Sure, keep an eye out.
good discussion.
Just in case there might be a few clams there we want to have so someone can down and dig a bushel of clams, like they got the, and enjoy it in their old age.
He said digging a bushel of clams is enjoyable, for the record. Now, can you read into this, what she's kind of like, what we've kind of brought up, like where we have this allocation happening, but we don't have active wardens? Like what might I'm not asking for a solution right now, but it sounds like
It's a good thing over the summer to just us, each one of them, us four, frankly, maybe come up with ideas for the future.
I
Yeah.
can do a rundown of the expenses that have been charged to that account, the general fund account that it's for the $3,400. I can get you a rundown of in the years past what we have said. I think it was boots or something for warden.
Other towns have funded money to build crab traps. Of course, they've got the resource to have the reason to protect crab traps. Resource, so that's. Yeah. It's just.
So what I'm hearing from you is that basically we really want to I mean, obviously, but I was trying to spread the wings a little bit, but our funds, restricted funds are basically most likely going to be allocated specifically for Shellfish.
Correct.
So we're going to have to stay on focus and try to figure out a way for some type of enhancement for Shellfish in some way, which we should, but it seems kind of a bit daunting. So it seems easier to bite around the edges of it, I think. But I think we're gonna have to knock our heads together. And I mean, it's like the opposite of the problem that most people have. Most committees are like, oh, we really would love to do this, but we have no funds. We're like, we have funds, but we don't have much idea of a productive way to engage them with the resource because of it being kind of reduced activity.
We've had that problem with the Southern Time program. It's just we've got plenty of area to do things, but we all as harvesters know that the majority of them now with the crab issue and the climate change issues no longer work. Brushing tends to, for the most part, be a big waste of time in most people's mind.
Anecdotally, I always my father mentioned like in the 70s, the green crab issue, with fencing, like wire fencing. Did you,
Yeah.
was that a thing like around the mouth of a cove?
there's good grabs, they're making fertilizer. out of it.
Yeah,
And now they got the.
Yeah, if you got the
Feeding-
go
feeding-
right through, yeah.
No, that didn't, they didn't go off.
Not only do you have big green species, but you have multiple small versions.
Right.
Invading armies, like the Huns.
Well, is it? I think that's a productive discussion about the budgetary situation and to be aware of how the allocations are being made and not directly utilized, I think is what we want to focus on for.
I have no issues, very honest, with making an effort to find out whether the police department has night vision glasses, because if you've got night harvesters around, those night vision glasses will get you in violations pretty quick.
It's a good point. And what I like about stuff like that is it equip something like that is it could be used for not only for shelf, but it could be a safety enhancement. So something like that is
South Dustin Town.
we should engage, like you said, and see maybe a way that we could support. Well, I don't, there was maybe gonna be a surprise guest, but he hasn't graced us with his presence today, so before that occurs, do we have any other business? Victor? You scold us about anything? I can hear you.
Thinking that maybe spending some money to improve access for people that aren't, used to slipping and sliding down the bank, or taking a long boat ride to go somewhere to dig. There's really not too many spots in and out of it. You can do that without having private property, landowner permission.
Yeah, so elaborating on what Victor's kind of mentioning there was he was wondering, potential of like maybe simple stairs in a location if there was an open area to
Right,
help for access or something like that down to the shore.
Gary Moore's, that area,
I know the town in that,
stairs were there, I don't know what's there in there.
I know the town doing the replanning or whatever, the 10-year plan was looking to identify access spots. So maybe when we see the different access spots are actually highlighted, maybe there could be some type of discussion about improving the physical, nothing extravagant. But that was just a suggestion that Victor had made. Well, thank you, Victor. Brian. Chasing kids around. I think we're honing in on if we don't have any other business.
Yeah, I mean, the only other thing on like what Victor was talking about is, unless you want to create any type of signage too, for that.
Yeah, that of like, I was almost thinking about that, like if we find out where the town has identified as the traditional town-owned shore access spots, maybe there is a type of signage that shellfish oriented that would be appropriate depending on what that specific site is. But again, I kind of don't, I think some over signage is kind of visual pollution, but
If you.
Yeah, no, I think you're right there, Rusty, but at least if you improve access with staircase or path or something like that and have some sort of little signage so people know what it's for and they're not, getting into issues with getting on other people's property, going wrong directions or something like that. I think there might be a subtle way to do it, but just an idea.
yeah, absolutely.
Sort of stairway.
And Gary Moore's what down by the sound.
Is that where we parked there?
Yeah, no, so we had that discussion at one, and I believe that it's in an easement that was set up by Maine Coast Heritage. So I think it's a private landowner that has
thought. that-
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then, and she described that really well. And the way I interpret it was that the landowner was not required to provide. I mean, if you were the landowner, the landowner is not required to provide shore access, but is not also in the same breath. They don't also have to block that. So it's essentially saying like, you don't have to provide, which I would, if I was a landowner, the way it was written. So I understood it, it sounded a little sketchy, but really it was the most reasonable solution. So the answer is, an easement set up by Maine Coast Heritage with private owner. Thank you. If I understand correctly.
What the liability issues there is for public using the land like that and with an easement, somebody's
Mhm.
have to act.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And that's why, I think if we were to look at a list of where the town identifies as most likely shore access spots, and then some of them might be town owned, and maybe it wouldn't be the ideal spot for harvest, but maybe it would be a spot to provide. But that is a cool thing about this type of, this industry, is it provides a shore access to people that, and a reason to be on the shore, which I think is healthy and good for people to do, even if they're not commercially like digging. So I think that's part of the legacy of the shellfish industry, is that there can be some shore access, a tether of shore access preserved. And I think that has some value, even if there's not dollars being like removed from.
You know, places that might have public access that are hard to get down to like that. If you increased it, made it easier, you're also increasing the usage.
Right, so that's the problem. And Victor mentions that
Which-
regularly.
You would definitely have to have signage like Hadley Point, because Hadley Point has historically had doo-doo issues that almost closed
Right.
because of the increased usage.
Well, some,
So a kiosk, if there was ever a time when that code would get a little help with the stairs in there, you would definitely have to put up signs to warn the public that dog waste can contaminate your shoreline and your clam flats and possibly close it.
yeah,
yeah,
Put it next to the
but
waste.
5 million people come in the island here.
yeah, that's,
And half of them would be clam diggers, you know, sports type thing for young people, would really enjoy. I've been on their bicycles and I put the stuff in gear and ride down to the shore and get some clam. You can't afford to buy them.
well, what do you think of all the schools since Evan?
Good to me. I think there's a lot to, explore here for sure.
Yeah, a lot of potential. It's just, we're not.
The places
I mean,
need
it's
digging.
like, where you have the funds. It's harder to get them back, so to speak, if you were to give them.
Yeah.
In other words, every time.
Yeah, that's another,
Always.
Yeah.
like another motivator to
Right, so I mean,
push them.
finding a use for them is a,
It's for sure.
I think,
Worthy,
worthy goal
Yeah.
and perhaps, something that should
And it's
moved on.
hashed out.
Hashed out, yeah.
Yeah,
And the low stakes that we're talking about, low stakes because of the balance that's hard, it's been accumulating over several years. The signs to just act as a supplement to the already established waste bag kiosks.
yeah.
Just adding something next to it that says, thank you so much, this helps save our clam population. So it wouldn't be as much of an expense to create the actual kiosk that's already in existence, but to add a supplemental sign for information, that's probably very, very low risk use of the funds.
It sounds like under the umbrella of being directly engaged with a shellfish. Yeah.
Exactly.
And then, liaise with the police office,
Yeah.
seeing, what they would need and, what they, can provide, I guess, would be, next steps as well.
And those are the $3,000 that we have per year around there budgeted. That is outside of this fund balance that has been accruing over the past several years. The 3,000 is a yearly
Yeah.
appropriation of the budget.
That goes well with restrooms. Kind of measure of that.
Yeah. Well,
So just for your reference, Rusty, back in March, you would ask a question, I got an answer for you, why the harbor was closed. So there was a pump station failure that closed the harbor for 21 days,
Oh,
from March 26th through March 27th.
Mhm.
That was why the harbor got closed. It's partially closed anyways, of course, but
So, just a short term.
it was a short-term closure for failure of one of the pump stations.
have you been out to see the bar in the harbor?
Dick is asking, what's the status of Gilpatrick?
Across the harbor? You ever dug over there?
Crossing the harbor.
Right across those climb bar that goes out, when you're going out the harbor on your left.
Right. Oh, yeah, that's over across.
That used to be one good spot. They love that mud in there.
What?
It's a good place to grow.
Well, before we adjourn, just to address, and I don't have anything to say really, to address Victor's question about Gilpatrick, my answer is I don't know. I don't know where we are with that. I wasn't at all leaning on Brian, but Brian was taking the wheel because he had the time and had made some headway with that, and I didn't really follow up with that, so.
Yeah, there's too many people saying, not my problem, it's their problem, it's not their problem, it's my problem, it's their problem. Nobody can give a definitive answer other than with the pumping station in the vicinity. That area's got to stay closed because of the regulations that exist. And until the regulations can be modified or adjusted slightly, open that small area, it's gonna be hell on earth to get.
And does that include the discussion of like holding the acreage in buffer and how the state was?
Exactly. Yeah, and since there's a radius around the station, whether it's working or it's physically existing, it's hard to get an area like that closed, because
Open.
down like a Gregory Park is a station like that. So, 40-mile radius, half moon radius around it, where it will never be open.
So the song,
Because it leaks, but because it physically is there.
the song sounds similar, or the same with locations like
I'd say
Gilpatrick.
we just keep pressing, that's all we can do. Maybe the fall, bring water quality back and ask them, would you like an update, how come this can't move forward? I agree with Victor, it's well time that COVID got open, good.
All right, well, I think I'm gonna,
No,
not yet, David, Scott.
I did do some heavy surveys up in the sound over the last month.
Good.
Everything basically from Sergeant Point, Northwood and Westwood and Eastwood. Some harbor is really dead. I finally got into Mason Point, Mason Cove, and that area is just dead.
Yeah, there is.
When I
agree.
mean dead, I
Nothing.
was shocked.
The other thing that's interesting is like Sergeant Cove is, I always remember mussels, there's not even mussels in Sergeant Cove anymore. It's just,
No, it really, because these erosive storms have really done severe damage to a lot of these areas that had no way of back flushing water. When those storms came up into the harbor, that's nothing to lead them. They just crushed some of these, horrid damage. But I was shocked with Mason Point, Mason Cove. They just dead. I couldn't have came out of there with meal plans. I also checked the cove over by Mount Zurich Campground, which is the one you see from the highway to the right there. And that area, I couldn't have harvested 5 pounds of clams. I was
behind the island there, between the campground and the island.
exactly
Yeah.
towards the.
And it's like beautiful habitat, you would think.
Unbelievable. There should be 1,000 bushel of land sitting in that mud, and there was nothing.
No.
I zigzagged it and went as far out to where the sound started to break. I worked my way eastward towards the railway, the old railway station. And other than one little spot, and might have been able to get 30 pounds out of. There's no reason for us to even ever consider it as harvestable or to even tell the shellfish warden they need to keep an eye on it.
So no evidence of hard shell like cherry stone?
I've still got a dog, sure.
Mm.
Yeah. And I was surprised that, there's no reason, I'm serious, the warden needs to know that there's no reason that all the waste his time in that harbor.
Yeah. So one phenomenon we've discussed is that the cherry stone type clams are harder shell and they seem to be more resistant to the green crab situation as compared to the little neck, like regular clams, soft shell clams that we harvest, so. There's a little hope there that they're sort of, the hard shell clams are appearing in places where they traditionally weren't, so something's hopefully gonna fill
The
it.
temperature of the water is very sensitive.
Yeah, and they can also be a little bit tolerant for that.
Uh,
Any other
No,
factoids on that?
no, that's.
Not much other mud or dirt or even soil, it's substrate in the sound to.
You're right, exactly. It's very hard for a lot of us, pulverized granite.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's hard, even though clam given an inch will survive in 2 inches of mud. Or rock, but this. The last time I was in there was probably 25 years ago. Not much has changed other than the fact that it's got severely worse. It's gone. It needs to be rode off. There's no reason ever to consider it again. I was really shocked.
Vic had another comment here. I believe it would be about Gilpatrick Cove. Would be a great spot for early access or easy access improvement. Maybe the committee could help or hire help navigating the process to reopening. I thought last word from DMR sounded like changes had been made to allow it to open if tests passed. Question.
Gary Ward Cove was closed for seeding.
Once upon a time.
Yeah, he did that.
Well, Vic's
I
right.
did my climbing there.
They're talking to Hannah Anderson. There's ways of tweaking a closure.
Yeah.
And it's, as she said, how much effort have you got to do to tweak the closure and how much cost is involved versus what are you actually getting out of it for harvesting? So that's a lot of times DMR will look at a project like that and say, what are we getting out of this in the long run?
So hypothetically,
Right.
if we came up to a hurdle with an opening of a location, hypothetically like Gilpatrick, and DMR said, oh, it's gonna cost $2,000 to do this test. We don't have it in the budget. Would that possibly be something like if we were,
Oh, sure.
if that would be something potentially that we, could maybe use funds for. So that's.
I think that's a great use.
I would confirm with the state and
Yeah.
There's like the money.
any use, I would probably want their approval before spending.
Make it easier for the people in town.
That, yes,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Welcome to Connie.
Right.
That's the bad part of the Shellfish Committee. We technically serve a higher power. Without their approval,
Gotcha.
nothing moves.
Yeah, so I'm not entirely sure or familiar with the process of like the expenditure of these funds, but I would guess probably getting approval from the state to use them and then asking approval from the select board. I'm guessing
Right.
that's probably the order in which to do that.
And if you were putting something forward before the select board, they would probably want at least one of you guys to come and speak to it, answer any questions that they had.
And confirm the state has approved.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. It would probably be a good usage of our time, God forbid we all have it, to do a good physical survey, get the state's approval for a 1-day grid survey of that cove and do a mathematical assessment of what's in there. Estimation of yield in that cove, because they're gonna wanna know. And the other biologists have gone in there, haven't seen as much as they had 2 years back. So. population-
In other words, if there was no, if there was no fruit to bear, then there would be no reason to poke the bear.
Exactly, because the ribbon ones, they got in there, which it would take me 10 minutes of flipping the mud over to find that out. And if they got in there, they'll lay waste to it in 3 months, the whole cove. Well, which is my guess what's probably happening. So
We
the
did-
best,
Already.
We heard you for a second.
nothing's coming through.
We did that survey already, and there was plenty enough for commercial, especially enough for recreational harvest there. And
So
you don't
Victor,
show a
how-
giant
how
resource
long
for them.
ago? How long ago was that survey done, do you think?
I would guess probably 4 or 5 years, but you don't have to have a pile of clams to want to have clean water in your town. That's an added bonus if there's shellfish down there.
Yeah.
It doesn't commercial amount.
Yeah, to repeat what Victor just said, you don't have to have a huge commercial resource to wanna have the water quality standard be elevated. And I think this committee, everyone on this committee would agree with that statement, I think.
Yeah, it's just how much the state's willing to put out, like I said, for what amount of resources in there, because she said it specifically to.
I know things change quick, so if he's talking 5 years, I mean, there could be a total change in the amount of resource in there and.
I would tell you, that's probably the case. I wish I had a little more time. I would have gone through there and just done a visual survey.
I don't think we could blame it on poachers either.
No, not at all.
No, I know, it's crazy. It's showing how many different factors. are
Well, it's terrible
affecting-
to know that poachers didn't even touch the place. It was
Right.
killed by Mother Nature.
Yeah, well, yeah.
From Brian here too, I agree with Victor. It would be great to get someone from DMR in the state to help point us in the right direction. When I spoke with Grace, Hannah and Dave with DMR in the state, they were not very helpful. Maybe Hannah's could help facilitate a conversation with the correct people.
Yeah, absolutely right. Hannah is.
Little small steps. If a big ask sometimes is hard.
We've been trying.
Well, we had, but
Victor-
Brian did make a lot of good
He
headway.
did. He did
Um,
more than all of us.
So small steps still have value is what I'm gonna go with. All right, well,
As we look at it, we've all pressure a few people.
45 minutes of pain here. We don't seem to know too much else. I think I'm gonna just expedite. If nothing else, I'm gonna make a motion for adjournment.
Second,
Favor?
All right.
Thank you, Brian and Victor, for gracing us with your presence.